How's it going, Nir? It's really good to finally have you on the podcast. I feel like we've been trying to schedule this thing for forever at this point, but I'm really excited for our conversation. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nir, I start everyone off with kind of telling their background, right, of how they got into the world that they're in right now. So, when I look at your LinkedIn, I see that you kind of started your career in pre-sales, right? Once you got out of the Israeli military, you got into pre-sales, and now you're in like identity fraud and handling that sort of thing. So talk to me about how you got into pre-sales, right? And then if there is, um, if there is, I guess, any skills in pre-sales, right, that you learned that pay dividends now?
Oh, great question. So, as you mentioned, I started in the Israeli military as a programmer, and I've been doing programming for few years, and pretty quick I've learned that I need the human interaction and a bit more dynamic environment, and that's basically why I moved into being pre-sale, and I think the most of the value I get from that period is deep understanding of the life of a salesperson, and what it requires for them, and how is it to work and create a relationship with a customer and build it, and how much effort you build it into that, and as a product manager in the identity and fraud, this is what I'm doing in the past 15 years or so. That I think gives me a lot of understanding of who I work with, which is both dev, which I have experience in sales and marketing, so on. So I think that's one of the biggest advantages of that period.
Yeah, I have noticed that at least in the cybersecurity space, it's kind of hit or miss with how people treat their salespeople. In terms of like the third party vendor, right? I have seen it where companies, I just treat them terribly. Like these salespeople are just looking for an update, right? Because they just did 3 months of work for you, and they need to justify it to their management to keep on doing it if you need it, and they just want an update to understand where they are in the process, right? To understand where we are in the process. And I never understood that, and I'm very against that, because like they're people at the end of the day. Like why can't we just treat them like people, respect their time, respect them, and go from there, not expect anything, in the back end. And I've experienced it, I guess, on the other side of that too, where people will gladly accept a sales call or whatever it might be, right? And they'll accept a dinner, they'll accept an event, a sporting event, right? But then they don't go that extra mile and actually get this person a call with the right people on the call to look at the product, to make it an assessment and say like, hey, maybe this will actually work for us. We don't have a project slated for right now, but we will have something down the line. I don't mean to talk too much, right? This episode is for you, obviously, right? But this kind of goes hand in hand with my selling internally episode that I did, where you treat the salesperson like a person, and yes, they may take you to dinner or lunch or something like that, right? But the important part is you actually setting up that phone call, getting the right people on the call and actually assessing the product, actually taking a serious look at it, regardless of if you have a project slated that year for it or not. You know, to that salesperson, that means the world, right? Because they're putting their neck out there, you know, on the line in their own company to say, hey, we need to spend resources on this. Is that something that you notice as well, or was it different at your companies? How was that?
So yeah, absolutely. I think you know, I'm not sure if it's only in the high tech industry or cybersecurity, but I definitely noticed that in this industry, many times people, we all play roles, right? Of, what your title is, what your job is, and so on. And people are sometimes too attached to that role and forget that in the end, it's all human beings, and we all, and we should treat to each other like that, and be respectful, and I think in the end, creating the relationships and creating trust is a key, both and as you mentioned, both internally and externally, because you do need to promote ideas, to sell ideas, in order to be successful, both internally and externally. And I think it's a key to remember on the other side there is a person, and don't do anything to them that you wouldn't want other people to do to you, and so on. So I relate to what you just said very, very much.
Right. So, talk to me about how you transitioned into your current role with an identity fraud company. That sounds like it is a huge jump, right? To go from pre-sales into identity fraud. Talk to me about, if there's any skills that you may have learned along the way that prepared you for this role, and just what you're doing, what the company's doing overall.
Sure. So, a little bit over 15 years ago, as I mentioned, I was pre-sale, and then I was interviewing to a company called Actimize, which was later acquired by NICE, and they're developing fraud detection systems for mainly financial institutions. And so I was interviewing for a pre-sale role, and one of the founders, he told me, well, you need to be a product manager. And he was one of the smartest people I ever worked with. And he explained to me why he thinks I'll be great in that. And I took that role. I ended up being a product manager in that company. And it was back when online payments just started, like bill payments in the US, and P2P and ACH and so on. And frauds were unbelievable. So the fraudster, they were the first one to adopt it. And many of the banks didn't have any solution. So we developed these systems that basically looks for anomalies based on the history of the payments and other types of indications that these are risky or fraudulent transactions. And I did that for 7 years. So I learned a lot about everything about, I guess, identity and digital identities and authentication and fraud and risk management and all of that. So that's where I think I got most of my initial understanding on that world. From there, I moved to a company called Trusteer that was acquired by IBM. And they were focused more on the cyber side of identity and fraud. So everything around financial malwares, both on desktops and mobiles, and phishing scams and so on. As it was acquired by IBM, we were part of IBM security and very much integrated into the identity management of IBM solutions. So I learned a lot about the identity piece, when working there. And then for me, it was very clear transition actually into Authentics that is dealing with identity proofing, which kind of merge between the two worlds of risk and fraud and identity. It's really great. We have a lot of very diverse and large customers from many industries, that's how I got here basically.
So, talk to me about identity proofing. What is identity proofing, and how does it help prevent fraud?
So, identity proofing in a very high level is part of KYC, Know Your Customer, process where basically organization is traditionally required to know who they deal with on the digital channel. So in the past, when you wanted to open a banking account, for example, you would go to the branch, you would show them your ID, they would copy it, they will look in your face, see that it's really your ID, they will log in all the details and so on. And they were required to do it because of regulations. With the transition to the digital world and with all the new regulations around anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing, there were more and more regulations that require those organizations to go through this know your customer process. And very key part of it is identity proofing, where basically you need to prove you are who you claim you are using a photo ID. Now, it all started originally for that specific need, which is more around compliance and regulation rather than fraud. But as the technology improved, and companies like us that were able to create this process fully automated, so it's all based on machine learning models that are doing everything from taking the picture in the best quality it is, identifying there is an ID there, classified ID, extracting all the data from the ID, running multiple forgery tests on it, comparing the selfie to the ID. All of that is fully automated and happens within 4 to 8 seconds. The user experience became relatively smooth. So it's not like it used to be you had actually manual reviews. People would review it manually behind the scene. So you could wait minutes, even hours until you get a response. So now it's within 4 to 8 seconds. So more and more companies are using our technology as a strong factor authentication instead of traditional ones that are basically not very effective. So instead of using one-time password on SMS or email, which any sophisticated fraudster can bypass easily using social engineering, in many cases, many of our customers use us whenever there is a risk for account takeover or a risky activity. They will require their users to go through an identity proofing to really show who they are. So that's basically where it sits.
So in the, I guess, the security architecture of this, would a user go through your identity proofing process and then they're issued potentially a PKI certificate, right, where then they can sign emails and do everything else with that certificate? Or is that something that is not currently incorporated with the product or anything?
Our basic offering is a process in which we end up giving a response to our customers saying whether or not we were able to verify the identity of that end user. From that point on, it's the responsibility of our customer to decide what they want to do. it could be, okay, we will re-credential you. We will allow you to transfer, I don't know, $50,000 in ACH. We will allow you to recover your account after it was hijacked, and so on and so on. Or it could be very simple things like, we will allow you to get a scooter because you need to prove us that you're aware team, or to rent an apartment in Airbnb, and so on. So there are different use cases, different verified moments, as we call it, where our customers will use our technology and then do something based on our response. There is a new technology in the industry called verifiable credentials, where basically the whole idea is that instead of us as consumers to show and share our details with different organizations unnecessarily, we will create a verifiable credential. That's different type of credentials that are cryptographically stored on a wallet on our mobile device. And then all we share is claims with the organization. So if I want to go and buy alcohol using, I don't know, Uber Eats or whatever, all they need for me to show is that I'm citizen of the US, for example, and over 21. So I will share my claims, and all they will get is, yes, he's a citizen of the US. Yes, he's over 21. It was certified by Authentics, who is a partner, and that's it. And first, the user experience is much smoother because you don't need to go through showing ID and so on. But more important, maybe as an end user, you don't share any of your information unnecessarily. And also for the organization, they don't need to keep it. So we do support all of that process as well. This is, we have a cooperation with Microsoft, Entra ID. They developed this system. So there are use cases where the end game of our process is creating these verifiable credentials that can be used in the future.
That's interesting. So you're saying that other entities will basically authenticate a user against, your service or whatnot to provide them access to whatever service they're offering, right? Or
yeah. So in the end, in the future, and I believe that will take a few years probably, because this is relatively new trend in the industry, but we do see more and more companies investing a lot around that verifiable credentials. Many of the new digital IDs, those standards, so the mobile driving license in the US is following the verifiable credential standards, the IDAS in the EU, and so on. So in the future, all of us, instead of having multiple type of IDs in our physical wallets, like driving license, and in some countries like Israel, you have an ID, and also you have your student card, and so on. You have in your mobile, you have multiple IDs. It could be from government issued, but also from different type of commercial organizations that you will be able to share and use and prove your credentials. For example, it could be to prove that you are a certified nurse or a doctor, or and so on. So think of all the different claims that you may need to use in your day-to-day. In the future, they will all be in your wallet, and you will just be able to share them in the most secure way without the need to carry on different type of certificates and so on.
That's interesting. I wonder if they will go that route with passports as well, right? Because I really like getting that passport stamp. I don't know. It's something. There's something satisfying about it. Like I'll go to a place just to get the stamp, rather than like anything else.
Yeah.
But it makes me. I don't know. It makes me slightly nervous, right? As a security professional, to have that on a digital device, it makes me wonder if there's someone out there that can, I don't know, hack into it and then use that to impersonate me. is there, let's just talk about Apple devices specifically, right? Because all of that would go into the wallet. And the wallet is supposed to be, secured to some extent. Is there protections or native protections around the wallet or those identifications that enhance the security in some way?
So yeah, I think that the key here that is it's all encrypted cryptographically. So none of the data is available if you try to somehow hack the app or anything like that. And it's all the certificates are out there in the blockchain, and you need to have access to that. You need to have access to the backend. So there are multiple measurements that are being taken in order to prevent any type of trying to hack or create forged IDs. Now there are multiple vendors and multiple type of wallets and so on. And as I mentioned, this is still early stages. But security is a key there. That's the key, KPI and all these standards and so on.
Yeah, I feel like it's not just early stages for you guys; it's early stages for that entire industry. Like it's almost like the entire industry has to reinvent themselves. With the new and emergent in tech and whatnot. It's really interesting. You mentioned that the encryption key is stored on the blockchain. So, why did you guys decide to store it on the blockchain, right? Versus, I don't know, an internal server, right? That's like heavily secured and whatnot, versus, any other option, right? Like potentially, I don't know, right? Like AWS KMS has a key service, or Azure has their key service, right? Like what made you go down the blockchain route? Because that's a very interesting route that you don't normally see right now, at least.
Yeah, so just to be clear, this architecture is not ours. That's the verifiable credential standard that is being built, and you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be built that way. If you everything I mentioned, if you want to, as an organization, for example, to build your own digital identity that will be used only for your employees or only for your consumers, you don't need to do that. The main reason to have the blockchain is if you want to create a digital ID that is following the standard, and then the point is that it will be able to be used with anyone who supports that standard and come with a claim. And you want to show, again, the Uber Eats or whatever, that you want to buy alcohol and you're over 21 and whatnot. The digital ID on your wallet, on your mobile phone, will provide a claim. Yeah, he is over 21, citizen. And the signature that they will look in the blockchain will show this was authenticated by a company called Authentics, and they were certified. Therefore, you can trust them. So to make sure that it was not created by someone that is not certified, and so that's I believe the main reason. And this way, it's fully accessible, and you don't need to know. That's also a very key aspect of the verifiable credentials. Not only you don't know who the person is behind it, just if they can provide the claims or not, you also don't know who provided it to them, because it's all about data privacy. So I think that's kind of the main objectives of using blockchain for that.
That's really interesting, because you always hear about, I guess, different governments or different politicians wanting to, outlaw the blockchain or crypto, right, to some extent. And me as a tech person, I try to think through that problem of how they would actually be able to accomplish it. And it seems like a impossible, unsurmountable task, right? Because you would have to have so much buy-in from the other 200 plus countries in the world,
Yeah.
right? And then you'd also have to have something on everyone's mobile device or, digital device, whatever it might be, right? That is looking for the blockchain and block that to some extent. I mean, that is such an extreme feat to
Yeah.
take. I just don't see that happening. Does I guess does anyone in the industry, right? Because you said that this is a standard. This is what's being developed, what everyone is going to be using that's in this space. Does anyone ever, I guess worry about that or have that in the back of their mind, or is it kind of like what I just said, right? Where it's like, yeah, they talk about it, but it's such an unsurmountable task that you kind of take a calculated risk, and it's like, well, I don't think that they'll ever be able to accomplish that.
I believe that while the different cryptocurrencies are based on blockchain, there should be a very clear separation between the technology and how you use it. And while I can see why some politicians or countries want to put different type of restrictions, regulations on cryptocurrencies, because while there is a lot of benefits and positive outcomes of this whole cryptocurrency world, there are and there were different risks as well. So I can understand why there are a lot of discussions around that. But when it goes to blockchain, which is basically the technology, and you can build different type of applications and great things on top of it that have nothing to do with the currency, then I don't think that there is any risk that I'm aware of that the technology itself will be banned in any way. And specifically on verifiable credentials and elements, it's part of the W3C, and I know many countries, including the US, are following that with different type of ideas. Maybe they don't comply with it completely, but they all try to come up with some kind of unified way for developing a standard for people to be able to digitally, safely, and securely identify themselves. And that technology seems like a great fit for that. So I believe that's where it will go to in the end.
Hmm. It's it's an interesting space. So, if you had to kind of guess or make a prediction, right? Where do you think it'll go in the next, 5 to 10 years? Where do you see this space going and growing?
That's very very hard to tell because it's moving super fast. And also because I think one of the main drivers for where this industry goes is so on one hand is the uh, legitimate players, so the governments and the large organizations, the Apple and Microsoft and Google of the world, and all the also e-commerce like Amazon and but very very important impact is the bad guys.
Hmm.
and they evolved faster than anyone. They adapt new technologies faster than anyone. And a lot is going on now around deepfake and generative AIs, and I think that this is going to change dramatically the way that organizations and even people how what terms, what technology they use to verify that whoever they interact with is really the person that they claim to be. We are now having this, online interview, but very shortly you could have this discussion with someone who looks exactly like me, my voice, but it will be fake. And now it could be your someone for your bank or someone for your work, or so I think there will be a need to have all the right technology to make sure that whoever you interact with is really the person, and not to trust our starting with as looking at the person, hearing the voice anymore. So I think that's going to drive a lot of the changes in this market.
Hmm. Well, Nir, before I let you go, why don't you tell my audience where they can find you if they wanted to reach out to you, where they can learn more about your company, and any other social media sites or links that they should know about.
Sure. So my name is Nir Stern. I work for Authentics. So Authentics is AU10TIX. You could go visit our website and get a lot of information on what Authentics does, and ask to be contacted with. And me personally, I believe the best way is to ping me on LinkedIn. I usually very responsive. And also on LinkedIn, you can find a lot of different types of articles and blogs that I publish. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nir. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope everyone enjoyed this episode.